Okay, thank you so much for today. I'm going to introduce our panel of experts here. I've spoken to them all. They've got a lot of good things to say. And I think what's interesting about this is that we all know that Web3 is about community. Community is the one thing people talk about. But community is made up of people. So this panel, I hope, will help talk about how you can shine as an individual in this space and how companies can shine in this space, in the Web3 space, and no jargons allowed. So if I can invite our panel up, we have Harry Davies from Albert Bow, who is here, and then Lola Rodriguez from blockchain.com, and Paul Owen from RecruitBlock, and last but not least, Kobie McGlashan from Be Experience. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Now, we only have half an hour, so what I'd like to do is ask our guests to say who they are, a bit like, Cilla Black in Blind Date. Who are you and where do you come from? Just a little intro to hear your voice and to hear. So, Lola, start off with you, please.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. My name is Lola. I'm from Argentina, recently moved to London. I come with 4 years of experience in recruiting, and I'm right now leading the recruiting function at blockchain.com. So happy to be here with you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Very, very, very polite audience this morning. Appreciate it. Harry?
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Nice. Well, I'm Harry. I'm the co-founder of Albert Bow. We are a tech recruitment business here in London. I'm also an advisor for a couple of different businesses, one of which is a Web3 business called Veston, which is going to be pitching in the Dijon Den later on today.
And Paul?
Hi, morning everybody. Paul Owen. Great to see you all here. I'm the founder of RecruitBlock, business that I set up back in 2018. We're a specialist Web3, crypto, blockchain recruitment and talent company.
Thank you very much, Paul. Come on, guys. I know there's one more to go. Kobie, if you want to just introduce yourself, please.
Hi all, thanks for having me. I'm the founder of Be Experience. We are a Web3 focused recruitment platform, 360 services, been going over a little over 2 years. I also do marketing, consultancy, go-to-market and strategy.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so we have a lot of talent here today. And actually, bear in mind what Adam said at the start when we did the introduction, Web3, it's a term that's bandied about a lot. I now say I'm in Web3, but kind of what is Web3? So employees in Web2 and Web3, is there a difference? And where do we start? Maybe that's, Lola, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think that the main difference, or I think that it's important that both Web2 and Web3 talent need to be flexible, agile, adapt to different circumstances and really fast-paced environments. Maybe the main difference could be related to products and technologies that they are using, or also of course, the type of the businesses, but in general, I think that the skills and those soft skills that I think that it's really important here could be really similar.
Okay, so it's agile. You're saying the difference between Web2 and Web3. Kobie, would you agree with that, or do you have a different viewpoint?
No, I totally do agree with that. I do think there's also an element of a massive culture difference between Web2 and Web3. I think understanding the ecosystem and the environment you're coming into plays a large part in being able to be efficient in the space. But yeah, culture is one thing that is vastly different from the Web2 world. And yes, it's definitely something to focus on.
I absolutely agree with you. Culture is it's phenomenal. Well, Paul, how would you describe the culture different, or could you describe the difference?
Yeah, I think the difference is mostly sort of focused around willingness to share, things being open source, things being community driven too as well. Not just within organisations, but between organisations in the space. I think people, for us as a business, and our clients, we want to see people who are bought into that, whose values themselves align with that culture and that way of working.
Okay, and Harry, was your company you just set up? You were saying was set up to do fintech, or was it to do Web3?
So we initially set it up to do fintech, just under 6 years ago. So then over the last kind of 2 or 3 years, we've really been transitioning and focusing on Web3, which has been an interesting change. Like you mentioned, I mean, culture is one of the biggest parts of any sort of business, and the fact that Web3 people call each other degenerates is
what, even the old ones?
I mean, I don't think you'll see that kind of terminology thrown around a bank anywhere. But no, it's been an interesting journey, and I think a lot of the Web3 businesses we are working with still have a lot to kind of focus on in terms of actually building the culture. Obviously, with decentralized working, people being all over the place, working remotely and stuff, it's kind of sometimes quite tricky to actually build a strong culture within the business. And I think obviously with events like this, and it helps massively.
Maybe could we talk about what makes a company a Web3 company? We're talking about culture. I know also, and you probably found this too as well, it's very huggy. I hug loads in this space, like, oh, hello, someone I know for like 2 minutes, my new best friend, which is it's lovely. It's all these endorphins are really nice, the dopamine hits. But what is a Web3 culture for a company, and what kind of company what does it need to do to make sure that they are living up to those expectations? Who would like to? Paul.
Yeah, I think there are a few sort of key things for companies. Culturally, I think people are looking for a degree of flexibility. I think they're looking for a proposition from a company that, again, I go back to them, being bought into. I think there's a way of working that people are looking for too as well. Many organisations are remote; they're fully distributed. That brings with it challenges, and I think in order to be able to position yourself, you've got to have a good proposition. And I think for many people in the space, that goes beyond what we might have seen 5-10 years ago with Web2 companies, where the driver was the salary. I think we're working with companies and we're working with talent where, yes, of course, that's an important element, but there's a lot beyond that too as well. And so for companies, startups particularly, needing to understand that and needing to be able to provide that too as well, is one of the big challenges. Definitely, there are motivations beyond how much people are going to take home in their pay packet at the end of every month.
I think I hear that a lot. Actually, Gen Zers, but even old folk are now looking at companies like, what do they really mean? What was their mission? And it's not just enough salary. Salary is important. You need to feed the kids or put food on the table or pay for your nightclubbing, whatever it is you need to pay for. But culture. So maybe, Kobie, how do you think, how are people maybe who are in the audience here who are running companies, small startups, how do you engender that kind of culture when you're all remote? Like, I mean, here today, maybe people have met for the first time, they've been speaking remotely, but how do companies engender that culture?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with value alignment. I think sticking true to the Web3 ethos, having, promoting self-sovereignty, the transparent open source, whatever it is, whether you're a Web2 company offering Web3 services or you're a Web3 company with blockchain technology components, I think it's important that you embrace not only the culture but the ecosystem you're entering. I think it's important that you have people that have been around in the ecosystem, much like any other technology or any other sector, having people that understand how things work, what ticks, what the market is, and how people receive content and information is definitely a necessity when looking at startup or scale up. But yeah, I just fully embrace the culture. I know it's probably going to be a bit of a buzzword on this panel and probably mostly on other panels, but yeah, fully embrace exactly the ecosystem you're entering, understand where your market is within that ecosystem, and make sure you're catering to those sorts of individuals. Okay, so it's really embracing. Lola, how do you think, we mentioned earlier before we came on stage, the idea, I call the term Web3 washing. You're going, what's Web3 washing? But just because a company puts out a tile that says we're a Web3 company, how do companies make sure that they are truly Web3 companies?
Yeah, I think it's really related to the talent that you're hiring, of course, the projects, but the talent that, of course, it needs to be aligned with Web3. They need to be maybe not coming from Web3, but at least interested in the crypto, in Web3, NFT space as well, to be involved in these projects that will kind of like come with a lot of like exposure and ownership and really fast-paced environment. So I think that, as the guys were saying before, culture is really important, having like strong values, hiring people that are aligned with those values and even more remote environments. to be able to achieve the goals of the team.
Okay, and Harry, would you concur there, or do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think that, probably a message to actual founders, if there are founders in here, obviously making sure you're thinking about what you can potentially offer these future employees. One of the things we've found over the last few years of working with startups and scale-ups is every single founder thinks that their business is the best business in the world.
The bee's knees.
Yeah, when they tend to not think what other companies are actually putting out in front of these candidates. So when going to offer these people, sometimes they think, oh, well, I shouldn't have to offer them all of this stuff because they should be interested in working for our company. So we tend to call it founders fever, but just making sure that you've got that sort of mindset, thinking, right, what more can I potentially be offering these future employees?
Okay, that's a good point, because we said earlier, the panel said earlier, that salary is not the only thing. It's important. But what other things, before we get on to candidates, what other things can companies offer that might make them attractive? So if there's founders here, get away from the founders fever. What can companies offer? Paul, you're keen to jump in here.
Yeah, I think I think the journey that a candidate goes on is an important, very important part of the process, and something that founders definitely need to think about. We work with clients, and people are going through interview stages within 7 days of their CV going through, and they're getting to offer. And making sure that process works really efficiently, really slickly, is absolutely key to be able to hire the talent that you need to drive your business forward. Processes that aren't slick like that, unfortunately, people get left behind.
And are there other elements that companies can offer to make them a really nice place to work?
Loads of tokens.
Well, I suppose that is a unique offering, isn't it?
I think so. I mean,
equity was the thing in fintech
yes,
back in the day, and now tokens for Web3.
Equity was the big thing. Obviously, there's certain things when founders are going to be offering equity out to new employees. There's often certain clauses in there, so if these people are going to be leaving, they're unable to actually benefit from any of that equity. Whereas with token allocation, obviously if it's actually going to be an open traded coin as well, then it allows them to actually generate some extra revenue from that, and that's usually with like a 1-year cliff, and then
and I guess it gives the founders a bit of extra clout. I mean, you're joining a company that not all companies obviously have tokens, but those that do. And I know back in 2017, I was advisor to many companies that had lots of tokens. I'm a millionaire. Not. They're all startups, so sadly they went by the way. Lola, you were going to jump in there with other things that companies can offer to make them a shining Web3 example.
Yeah, I think that something really important is diversity and inclusion in terms of like not only the interview process, but also at the end, on the daily basis, offer a diverse space for the talent and the entire organization. At Blockchain, for example, what we are doing, well, we have a cultural manager that is 100% focused on trainings and workshops related to diversity and inclusion as well. We have like different channels to, of course, talk about these topics and make them, well, different communities at Blockchain to feel kind of like have this feeling of belonging and representation. So I think that that's something it's important through the hiring process, but also on the daily basis as well.
Oh, interesting. I was going to get to that later on, but thank you for bringing it up. What does the panel think then about things like quotas? Do you have a position on quotas when you're doing your D&I hiring?
We often get asked, obviously, to try to include a diverse set of candidates whenever we're working with companies, but sometimes it's just you can't always find them, which is quite tricky. Engineering is particularly tricky, and when you delve into even further into kind of DeFi and things like that, the diverse pool of candidates starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller. But I always think, obviously, it brings new mindsets into the company, which is massively important. But I'm always a big believer in you've got to make the right hire, no matter where you're from or whatever your background is.
Yeah, to some extent, it's a challenge because we're still a very young space, and particularly if a startup or even a more established business in the space is looking for somebody who has got existing experience in the space, for example, then the pool of talent that is available reduces again. That's always something to bear in mind too. There's there's a balance to be had there. Yes, of course, absolutely, we want to encourage that. I think it's sort of fairly incumbent on us to do that because we're working with technologies that are all about, including people who may not necessarily have been included up until now.
Yeah,
so from
building.
Very much, yeah, absolutely, we need to have that as an ethos within our organisations too, as well. But just bear in mind that the talent pool is growing, but who's been working in this space for more than a handful of years at the most.
I think it's interesting. I mentioned quotas. I often get into fights with my friends because I believe in quotas in political parties, because if you don't force quotas, you take 400 years to equal just this male, female, forget all the other permutations to do with diversity. But I think the difference in Web3, and you're saying it's very new and it's hard to find people, Web3 lends itself, I think, to diversity because there's that kind of like the gig economy. You can work remotely. So if you're a person looking after children or elderly parents or different parts of the world, you have access that you mightn't have had before. So I think we have an opportunity here in Web3 to really push that diversity and inclusion. And we do know it improves, 100% improves the company. It's not just a nice thing to do. It's a fantastic thing to do for the company. So it's commercial as well as being a good citizen of this world.
Definitely. Sorry.
You were just scratching your chin.
Yeah.
Right?
I was going
100% agree with it because I think with moving on from what you're mentioning there, I think there's a big opportunity for Web3. I see it as probably the most inclusive industry at the moment. I mean, like with the people here, like you mentioned earlier, everyone just hugs everybody. You could be an introverted developer or a completely loopy marketer, but then everyone tends to get along with each other really well because you've all got this kind of common factor in place, and that is crypto and the love for the space. So I definitely think it's a much more open environment for people to get involved in.
Yeah, I do think there is certainly an argument to make sure that a variety of demographics are represented, but much like the panelists have been saying here, it's quite a small pond, particularly when you get into specialist roles and senior roles. So I do also think there is an element of the best person for the job needs to get the job. And again, we are in an ecosystem where a lot of people are represented by a JPEG, so who's behind that JPEG shouldn't really matter. It's more so, are you merit-based and being able to accomplish that role? And no matter where you're from, if you're right fit for the job, you're right for the job. But I definitely do think there's an importance of having multiple demographics represented. Yeah,
I'm going to add a piece into passion is so important in this space. And I remember a long time ago, but if you find someone with a passion, doesn't matter where maybe they're not C-suite as they start off, but if you support them, and then you recognize that person has an inherent, you've got talents in certain areas. And you say, right, you haven't done C-suite before, but let's get behind you and use your talents and get you up. And I think for founders, you surround yourself with the best people. That's where you get the best results. So I think that's quite encouraging to think along those terms, that you can grow somebody into a C-suite who mightn't have had that before. You want to come?
Yeah. I think most founders recognise that, don't they? The very community nature of the space that we're in, also lends itself to that too as well. Everybody here has got a passion for the space, whether you've worked in it already or whether you want to. So yeah, that's a key driver, isn't it? And I think companies are for the most part willing to and do understand that if the passion is there, the interest is there. If somebody's bought into the space, even if they haven't worked in it, then you're most of the way down the line already.
And Lola, you want to?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. For example, in terms of like recruiting, of course, there are some positions where we need to hire people that already come like with experience, professional experience in the space. But there are like so many other positions that if you're interested in crypto personally, if you have like any side projects or as a hobby, I think that is like really valuable and it really shows at the end of the day.
I've done a lot of work actually recently with neurodiversity. There's a neurodiversity in business in the UK organisation, and I think Web3 can capture, because neurodiverse people tend to be incredibly talented. They just maybe don't deal with ordinary, like making eye contact or all these different things they don't do well in a busy office environment. But with the remote, decentralized companies that we have here, they could do fantastically and they could stay in their bedroom, whatever, it doesn't, but they can contribute to a community. So I think that's very powerful. So speaking of which, we've been talking to maybe founders in the room about how to make your company more Web3, attractive. As a person, maybe people out here who are looking to move, and also, by the way, if you're looking for work, come and talk to these guys. They're obviously got their finger on the pulse. But what makes a standout Web3 candidate? Oh, you're there first. You're up.
I'll go for it. It's something that I very often advise people that are looking to sort of break into the space, or even if they're in the space. I think the importance of your personal brand plays a massive influence. The more people that know you, the more your stock is able to be sold on into companies. So I think having a following, having a brand behind that, with Web3 and just the market in general now, content is certainly here. We are in a content era where a lot of people consume content. If you are being able to post around your subject matter, so if you're an expert in marketing or whatever it may be, if you're posting regular content, you're getting yourself out and about there, coming to events and networking like this, and getting your name about is definitely one of those things. It's like what you have beyond your skill sets. And the skill set is one thing, but you can also bring a certain level of audience to that business that you're applying for as well.
Is that scary for someone who might be introvert?
Absolutely, but as we were saying, right, a lot of us are behind a computer screen and behind a JPEG, and this really is an opportunity to express your creative juices, whether it's written, whether it's video, whether it's vlog format, wherever it is. I think being able to sort of have that level of being anonymous while being able to express yourself on whatever forum you'd like to is certainly something that you're not really seeing in the Web 2 world, and it's something that you can capitalize on in Web 3. But yeah, obviously there's going to be people that don't like to get themselves out there. But again, just being in and around environments that you would be able to grow a brand presence, whether it's your personal name, whether it's your anon name, whatever it may be, having a level of brand presence is always going to help you set above the rest of the market.
And I suppose in the days of post-COVID, there are the meetups. Obviously, this is a very big meetup and it's fantastic. And we thank Zebu Live for hosting this. But there's lots of little small meetups where you can meet. You don't have to maybe go on stage, but you can just chat with people. You're nodding. You're nodding there. Never nod. No, never nod at an auction, right? Or on a panel.
Make eye contact and nod. No, completely agree. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, like the events like this are a massive opportunity for people to meet their teammates and also educate themselves. I think education is a massive part in the space. There's companies like Crypto Saving Expert, which are building out an educational platform. And it's a really kind of useful tool for people who want to transition from Web 2 into Web 3. And if people are slightly more introverted and they don't have a kind of big social following and they don't know how to actually create or build their own personal brand, I'll just challenge you to actually just educate yourself and really kind of hone in on your actual skill set.
And I think we'll find, I'll let you know, but I think we'll find too as well, Web3 people are very forgiving. You can ask them anything. They are very genuine. This is not just like, we're all very nice people. People are genuinely all aligned on the same values, the same passion. What we're doing here, it's like as if we're always like doctors on the war front or something. We have a mission. We want to do something. Paul, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, harness the open source nature of what Web3 is, and use that to your advantage. We're all still learning.
So passion.
Yeah, it comes back to the conversation around passion, right? Like I know for me personally, I can imagine the sentiment is shared here. I can't shut up about Web3. So if you want to come and ask questions, I'll ramble probably too much. But yeah, the opportunity to learn, you'll learn far more from an expert in a 15-minute conversation than you would in sort of most modules. So yeah, just like Harry said, just go and don't be afraid to ask people, can I pick your brain for 5 minutes on this subject? And yeah, that obviously builds your network. You get a bit of face time, but you also learn an infinite amount of value just by speaking to people in the space.
So you're not very popular in the dinner party circuit?
Absolutely not, no.
He's banned. Lola, you're going to say something there.
Yeah, I think that is something that comes like to the beginning, like being flexible, being agile, like showing that you are not afraid of owning a project or owning a piece of system, like really having exposure and really wanting to have an impact. I think that is really valuable whenever we are interviewing candidates or meeting new talent. It's not only where did you work before, if you were working in crypto before, but really kind of like this hunger to continue learning, this hunger to own, to have exposure, to look like 2 years back and see everything that you have built with the team, of course, but always kind of like having this approach towards like ownership. I think that's really important to highlight.
Okay, so if you were to advise candidates who want to get into this space, maybe to hop from Web 2 to Web 3 or to upgrade themselves, as we would consider it, how would they change their CV? What would you say? Paul, what would you suggest they do with their CV to make them Web 3 attractive? It's like Web 3 enthusiast in the top.
I think I think try to position yourself as uniquely as you can in terms of your CV, I would say I wouldn't actually say people need to be overly hung up on their CV, if I'm honest, because I think people are looking beyond the paper.
Are CVs old-fashioned?
I'm not saying they're old-fashioned, but I think I think the stuff that we've alluded to here too as well sits alongside that. The knowledge learning, the having a presence, social presence, presence in the community. The CV form's part of it, yes, but it's just one element of a picture really that you're building about yourself, and I think that's quite a significant difference to old Web 2.
You're all hiring, you're all in recruitment. If somebody wants to get a job in Web 3, so obviously in LinkedIn we're hiring, or I'm looking for work. Who puts I'm looking for work? I don't know, that's what's a bit strange to me. But we're hiring. How do people find these jobs? I mean, like, where do you go? You go, okay, I really want to work in a space. I'm a lawyer. I'm a marketeer. I'm a social marketer, whatever. How do you find the jobs?
I think Web 3 people actually have almost more options than Web 2, because you've got LinkedIn, you've got all these different job boards which are popping up left, right and centre. You've not only got the Discord channels, you've got Telegram channels, you've got Twitter or X. So there's such a wide variety of sources for people to go and actually search for these positions. Like some of the Telegram groups that are being set up, we've set one up called Block Jobs, where candidates can actually just go and speak to hiring managers directly, and then we don't actually charge anything for it. So there's about 150 CTOs in this group, and people can just go and introduce themselves. So it's really kind of, I think, putting yourself out there, and just going and exploring these new opportunities, new companies, and just actually find a business that you actually find interesting, and don't be afraid to actually approach them.
That's interesting, actually, isn't it? Because that would never happen in Web 2. You wouldn't go off the thing, oh, I like your business. And I think in Web 3, a lot of the time I've seen in the Telegram groups in particular, people who are volunteering to administer, and you think, why are these people volunteering when the CEOs have loads of money, but they're building up good credit and karma and brownie points, whatever you want to call it. And so that's a good way, isn't it? So if someone's interested, get into a Telegram group or some sort of Discord. I hate Discord, but that's my personal prejudice. But get into one of those groups and just start talking to people, even if you can't meet them at meetups, even if you're in, I don't know, Scotland or something very far away from London.
It's offer value before you expect to extract it, right? And much like you're saying, if you can go into and seek out a product or service that you have familiarity with and you relate to, go and offer to do what you do. So, I've got this service or this product that will massively help X. Let me run this for free for you, see if it works any good, and if you like it, we can talk about something a bit more of a permanent solution. And it leads back into just going and getting yourself out there and introducing yourself and letting people know exactly what it is you offer. I think too many people are caught up on, how do I speak to them and get this in return? Show them what you can do first. Show them what sets you apart from every other employer they'll have, or every other person that's applying to their jobs on the job board. And offer something that they're not probably going to be expecting. Offer a bit of a free service. I'm not saying for everyone to work for free, obviously, we all like money. But just offer something that they can see the value you're going to be giving.
Or even just have a communication. Get into those Telegram groups, as you say, they're usually open, and be talkative, be chatty, put things in. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, 100%. And if you have done like any side projects, or if you have been a super active crypto user, it's like showing that, and I don't know, I think that having a conversation with people in the industry, with hiring managers, with recruiters, with founders, and explaining why are you interested in the industry, why do you want to be here, what is kind of like the difference that you can make, that's definitely worth it.
I mean, it's so different from my background would have been fintech originally, and the CEO was nowhere near the plebs. There was like a huge awning gap, and now, of course, CEOs and CTOs are they're approachable, which is part of this Web3 thing. So people looking to move, get talking, I think. Isn't that the advice, that you would get into those things and talk? Obviously you're here. Well done for coming here in person. but in the Telegram groups get chatting.
And that's the beauty of Web3 in general. Like you look at spaces, never before in Web2 or previous employment, we've had direct access to these founders, these CEOs, these CTOs, where you can go in and ask questions on a live forum, almost like a podcast. And we haven't had that before. So use that opportunity to understand what their pain points are, what the bottlenecks are in their products or services, and then position the way you're going to speak to them around that or ask your questions around that as well. So yeah, I think it's an amazing opportunity for you to, absolutely.
I think we're coming close to our time, so I want to ask a quick fire round to the four experts here on the panel before I open the floor to questions from anybody in the audience here. But I want to ask, we've used the word passion a lot. So what makes you, I'll start with you, Lola, because you're next to me. What makes you passionate about Web3 and recruitment in Web3?
Yeah, I think that, well, the impact you can make, the impact in society, no matter the position, if you're working as an engineer or HR, legal, well, finance, it's the impact that you can have, like in continue building the future of finance. At least in crypto, that's what we're doing at blockchain. So I think that is something that motivates you every day. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky, and it has been a really chaotic year, 2022. But it's definitely a fascinating space to be working at.
I think you're right. I often say I have two sisters who are nurses, and they're saving lives and doing amazing things. And I'm going, I'm in Web3. I'm in Web3. I'm not quite sure they quite believe me. Harry, what makes you passionate about this space?
I think it's just mainly, going back down to the kind of the openness of the people that you're working with, the opportunity to be able to go and speak to CTOs or founders of these businesses directly. I've been to a lot of conferences. I went to one a couple of months ago, which was a gambling and payments conference, and it was possibly the most depressing afternoon of my life. And it's just, I think, the opportunity and the possibility to speak to really interesting people. Everyone seems to be building something really, really interesting as well. And it's nice to see that different founders are happy to actually give each other advice, even if they might have a slight overlap or competitive edge or something like that. Everyone's kind of honing in towards this kind of end goal, and that is a decentralized world.
Cool. Paul, your take on your passion?
So I think the power of the underlying technology, and then ultimately, we're people, and that's the beauty of this space, and people's willingness to share.
Great. You get the last, Kobie, at the end there.
Yeah, just stripping back to what Web3 represents in general, right? It's self-custody of assets, freedom of movement, freedom of finance. Before I started any businesses in the space, I was an investor and an enthusiast first. I love the movement. I love what it represents. And I don't think there's ever been an emerging asset class or tech asset class that has such a story behind like getting away from those centralized authorities and really taking your assets in your life and your movement into your own hands.
Brilliant. So, Adam, do we have time for questions, or how are we going? No.
Because it's a little bit far. Do we want any questions, folks?
I just got one.
Okay, well, since that was such quick and enthusiasm, we will allow a question.
Thank you. So I think this goes to the point, Jillian, you mentioned around the opportunities that the decentralized work gives for bringing in inclusivity. So I'd be really interested to know, like, as it stands, how many of the roles that you're working with are still traditional full-time working hours, sort of 9 till whatever time, 5 days a week, versus different models, maybe paying by deliverable or less hours or just sort of a different model?
I think Web3 is almost creating not only just a slightly different working model, it's almost changing the structure of how businesses are actually built. If you look at kind of decentralized autonomous organizations or DAOs, it's a completely different way of working. I think as well, I'm a big believer in going to the office, which a lot of people don't like. But I mean, for me, it's very much kind of goes back to almost allows people to build up the culture. As long as you've got kind of 4-hour time difference, I think that's the main thing. But a lot of the businesses we're working with at the moment, they still do tend to stick to the usual timings in each day. But then again, there are some that just go, right, deliver this, as fast as you can. If it works, happy days.
Yeah, ours is pretty much the opposite in that aspect. It's not really any set times. It's more of a gig economy. And whether you're working 2 hours a day or 20 hours a day, if you're doing the job, you're doing the job. And much why I love Web3 is you can do that job from anywhere in the world. Like Harry's saying, as long as sort of time zones align or there's at least some crossover with the team that you're going to be working to or with. But yeah, I would say around 80% of the roles we have available at the moment are, I'd say, full-time, but there's no like you log in and log out at these times. It's whenever your job's done, your job's done.
Exciting.
Output driven. I think that's the answer. We work with clients where 100% distributed around the world. We work with some where it is still predominantly office based, but it's flexible. But the key thing is they're all output driven companies.
Brilliant. Well, may I ask the audience to, and it's so full now, I haven't looked for a while, it's great, to thank our panel of experts for their time, and please do approach them afterwards if you want to get a job or find a candidate. Thank you so much for the wonderful panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.